All right, I want to talk about Tesla Robotaxi next month. It's set to launch. We're getting some clues here that are very interesting. For me, there's two that I'm following very closely. One, the likelihood that Tesla's going to launch without a safety driver behind the steering wheel and pedal. And the second one is how quickly they're going to be able to essentially roll out self-driving across Austin and other parts of the state. Two things that are very interesting to me. Number one, Texas doesn't require a safety driver behind the steering wheel and pedal from the get-go, which basically means that if Tesla feels confident that they have the right technology, the right safety, they could launch this thing from the get-go without a safety driver. As I'm reading all your comments, as I'm reading everyone's sort of thoughts on X and all the other really excellent information out there, the premise that Tesla has had safety drivers for the last 3, 4, 5 years, while everyone's been operating their, basically level 2 self-driving car. Level 2 basically means that someone has to always pay attention to the car while it's driving itself, which is what Tesla's FSD system has been. That's a form of a supervised safety driver and going in and stepping in when need be. As the system has gotten better and better, it's required less and less inputs from the driver to the point where now you don't even have to put any input into the steering wheel. The camera just looks at you and it makes sure that you're looking straight. And that's all it does with the latest versions, with FSD 13 specifically, where they are one of the sub-releases of 13, if I remember correctly. Basically, they removed that requirement from a lot of the vehicles. So now the driver doesn't really have to do anything at all to let the system it's there. It just has to be there to pay attention just in case they have to jump in. And with the latest versions, it's gotten extremely good at interventions, at miles between interventions rather. So you could go hundreds of miles, potentially thousands of miles between any interventions. That's basically the same exact function as a safety driver, as an actual physical driver behind, let's say, the steering wheel of a Waymo, which is what Waymo has used to release. And so given that Texas doesn't require a safety driver, could that mean that Tesla could just get going right away without one behind the steering wheel and pedal of the car? I'm really at the point right now where I'm going to go officially on record and say yes, that Tesla will release this car in Austin next month in June without a safety driver, meaning that the cars will drive themselves. There'll be nobody behind the steering wheel and pedal. And Tesla will release some sort of new version 14, whatever it is, to be able to do that. Another pointer there that's interesting about why I think that's the case is if you think about the We Robot event from Tesla from a few months ago, it feels like a forever now, but when they unveiled the Cybercab, this would have been December, January, somebody remind me the exact month, but it's been a minute. The Cybercab doesn't even have a steering wheel and pedal, and they had a whole event where the Cybercab was driving from point A to point B. There were people walking all over the place. There were just these cars just driving themselves all over the place. They were doing that 6 months ago. Now, super controlled environment. The destinations were, pre-mapped, I'm sure. You couldn't just go to anywhere you wanted. You have to go to very specific places. So an extremely controlled environment. But the key takeaway there is that even if a human wanted to jump in and intervene, they couldn't. And the car was basically driving itself, and there was no way for you to step in and drive it, right? So this would be the next step, is doing this now in a city, in a controlled environment, in this case, Austin. Now, the speed at which Tesla is going to be able to roll this out to not just this region, but the broader state, the interesting thing there is that when we look at the regulations for autonomous vehicles in Texas, the policies and how far, let's say, the cars can go, they're not dictated by the city, they're not dictated by the municipality or the counties, it's dictated by the state. So what that means is that Texas has this law around autonomous vehicles, again, which says you don't have to have a safety driver, but they also say that no city can come up with a specific rule set for autonomous vehicles or some sort of boundaries for those autonomous vehicles, which means that it's up to the company to decide how big of a zone or how many blocks or how far away from, let's say, their mothership or the headquarters, let's say, for this operation, they decide how far they want to go. And this is a really big deal for Tesla specifically, because if you really think about their approach versus everyone else's approach, and when I say everyone else, I mean Waymo in this case. And Waymo, fantastic company, but their biggest issue by far is scale. They only have 1,000 to 1,500 of these cars on the road, if that. Tesla's approach is specifically designed for areas where everyone else is not. So what do I mean by that? Waymo, Zoox, Cruise back in the day and all these other players rely on pre-mapped roads, on roads that they've gone out and they verified exist. And they verify that there's nothing blocking the roads. It's going to be friendly enough to their system. It's something that they feel confident in to make it work, right? And so the next step they have to do is figure out, okay, we need the best combination of roads we can go to and where people are going to be to take the fares and actually pay us money. And that's why you end up having these guys in these city centers, basically, where it's the most amount of people. And so in theory, it would be the highest number of customers, but for a small region within those states or cities, let's say. It's limited to, like, for example, in Austin, Waymo is limited to the city of Austin, not the entire city even, but a subsegment of the city. It's actually much bigger than I realized. So it's a pretty significant place, but it's Austin. It's the city of Austin. The reason why Waymo, in my opinion, the reason why they don't go in places like Georgetown or Cedar Park or Leander or Collin Buda, Bastrop, right, which are suburbs basically. It's because as you go out of the city center, the amount of roads you have to map and the amount of roads you have to maintain double or triple. The area under the curve that you have to account for gets significantly bigger. And then the number of people that are in those regions theoretically doubles again, but the amount of road you have to maintain is way, way, way bigger. It's actually significantly more than 2x, probably like 4x the roads, right? And so it becomes 4 times harder basically to expand your area of coverage. Thing is, in those areas, the big win you're getting are people that are going from, say, suburb to city, or suburb to airport, or suburb to suburb, right? Most people drive into the city. They don't drive within the city, they drive into the city, unless you're like on a Friday night, Saturday night, or Sunday night. But everyone going to work, everyone coming home from work, maybe going up to an event or something, going to the airport, a lot of that traffic comes in from these suburbs, Georgetown, right? Like all these other places that are coming into Austin. And we're not even talking about Austin to San Antonio, Austin to Dallas, far away, but those trips happen all the time in Texas specifically. With that type of regulation in the state where the cities don't get to dictate their own regulation, basically, that opens up the floodgates for a company like Tesla to, hopefully from the get-go, we'll find out next month, get an approach like this out. Because their system is perfectly equipped for this. They don't require HD maps. They don't require mapping of the roads. They don't require what Waymo requires, which is making sure every inch of the road exists. Tesla's approach uses an AI brain, and it analyzes the road just like any of us would, and it will just drive, right? If you drop me in the middle of nowhere, Idaho, okay, with my car, and then you tell me to get to the airport, right, in wherever the airport is in Idaho, shout out maybe Boise, I don't know, I will get there. You can't do that with a Waymo. You can't just drop a Waymo and drop it in Idaho. You know, say, go to the Boise airport. But I bet you a bunch of donuts, let's say, that if you drop a Tesla vehicle anywhere on the road in Idaho, and then you say, hey, get me to the airport, and you use the latest version of FSD, and the person's just sitting in the driver's seat and just watch it go, I bet you 98, 99, even 99.9% of the time, potentially, that car will make it. That car will make it. And that is Tesla's advantage. And the regulation in Texas allows for Tesla to do that now if they wanted. Because again, Austin doesn't own the regulation for this region, you know, of this sort of metro area that we're in. It's the state of Texas. And if Tesla can operate in Austin, theoretically they can operate anywhere in Texas. And so this is going to be the key thing to track with the company. For the last year or two, the key thing to track was the speed at which Tesla would improve their self-driving capability using neural nets and the acceleration of that capability. We needed to see very fast improvement on an already vastly superior product. And we've seen that. And that's the thing that's really exciting, right? Is we've seen people that own Teslas that specifically have Forward 4 and Model Ys and Model 3s with the latest version in almost all situations. The performance is to a point where people don't even have to drive anymore. They get in the car, they put the address, they press the button, take me there, right? And then it just takes you there. It just takes you there. So now we need to see the same exact thing with how quickly this service propagates through the regions that it's dropped in, specifically if the regulation in those states allows for that. And that's something very interesting to track. I'm going to study the California and the Arizona and all the other regulations here today as well. But if Tesla can pull this off, if Tesla can, let's say next month rather, they launch in Austin. Let's even say that it's a smaller region than Waymo. Let's say it's that. How quickly they can go outside of that small region, I think will be the thing to track. Is we started within the first 20 blocks within downtown Austin for our trial. Okay, 3 months later. Okay, now we're gonna go out to UT, the University of Texas. Cool. All right, now we're gonna hit the first line of suburbs, your Pflugervilles and your Cedar Parks and all these guys, right? Your Kyles and Budas and whatnot. Your Hutto maybe. Hutto's kind of far. Boom, you go there. All right, we're gonna go a little further now. Leander, Georgetown, Maybe they'll go farther west into your bee caves and your, lakeways and whatnot. And then maybe they're like, okay, cool, we're comfortable there. Now we're gonna go a little farther, right? And that's where it can really get super, super exciting, super fast. And obviously other states as well, right? Can they get into other states faster? How quickly is that gonna be? That's something I'm gonna be tracking very, very, very closely. Because if that starts to happen and the area, the coverage ramps really quickly, then that says that Tesla has not only the technology, right? But the ability to scale that technology through the area of coverage and then the cars that they're building on top of that, right? Because you can go as far as you want, but if you don't have the cars to go into those regions, if you don't have enough cars to service those regions, then it doesn't matter how good your technology is. But Tesla has both. In theory, they have the technology to drive, suburb to suburb, suburb to airport, suburb to other city, and they have the amount of cars needed to service those areas. Because if that's the case, if you can get from your house to the airport at half the price of Uber, let's say, right? And you skip all the parking costs, et cetera, that becomes a no-brainer product for anybody, right? And it's just, at that point, it's just getting over the fear of getting into a self-driving car and just going with something that costs less. And it's gonna be safer, it's gonna be more comfortable, it's gonna be private, et cetera. So let's start tracking that next month. And it's super exciting. It's a really freaking exciting time. I can't believe it's here actually. So I'm gonna be creating a bunch of content around that once they launch the self-driving stuff in Austin. Very excited to try a bunch of routes, compare it to Waymo. I have some ideas of some cool stuff we could do with the cars and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm very, very excited. And then the next step beyond that is how quickly can Tesla get people's personal cars, right? Where they don't even have to pay attention at all. And even better, just yank them. Send the car to grandma. Okay. And it just goes to grandma, right? Thanks for watching.